For you out of the NFL, where the Jets are trading for Justin Fields, I should say, to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the latest from our Jonathan Jones. In return, New York will receive a 2027 sixth-round pick. Two-time MVP Patrick Mahomes is recovering from that torn ACL, if you remember, from last season in December. But it's still unknown whether he'll be ready for the start of the regular season. Fields appeared in 9 games for New York last season, throwing 7 touchdowns and just 1 interception. He'll join his 4th team in 6 years. Check this out: the Bears, Steelers, and Jets. So we'll see what happens there with Fields. Maybe QB1 for the beginning of the season, with Mahomes on the shelf. All right, join us for more of that breaking news. Jonathan Jones, of course, as I mentioned there. Also, Leger Douzable. But JJ, I'm going to come to you first. Give us the news and how this happened today.
So there was a thought that the Jets would release Justin Fields at the start of the new league year, that they would wind up eating the $10 million in guaranteed money because he essentially played for 1 year and $30 million on a 2-year, $40 million contract he signed last year that aged rather poorly for, at the time, first-year GM Darren Muji, first-year head coach Aaron Glenn. You had midway through the season, the owner, Woody Johnson, throwing the quarterback under the bus for the ineptitude of the offense. And now, as we got to the new league year, the Jets hung on to Justin Fields. I was inquiring about that over the weekend. Seemed like something was in the works for the Jets, that he was not going to be coming back in 2026. And so he heads to Kansas City to back up Patrick Mahomes, potentially resurrect his career, spend a year under Andy Reid. Now, all indications that I have received are that Patrick Mahomes is expected to return for week 1, but certainly during OTAs and minicamp, maybe even the start of training camp, you're going to need somebody taking QB1 reps that is not Patrick Mahomes as he continues to recover, at least day to day. And so enter Justin Fields, now getting that opportunity to back up the great young Patrick Mahomes.
Leger, on the flip side of this, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like JJ, I was surprised he wasn't released when the New Year League started. But to his point, there was something in the works. And from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, because when you look at the scope of the NFL, a lot of backup jobs have already been taken. So if you're Kansas City, right now you're looking at Chris Oladokun, who I believe played in that Week 18 game last year in the finale and struggled in that game. So to JJ's point, you don't want to go into the offseason, because we all assume that Patrick Mahomes won't be ready to do off-season things coming off that ACL late in the season. You want a veteran-type player to be able to run your offense. And the interesting thing about this move, fellas, is I believe this will be the first time that Justin Fields goes to an offensive-minded head coach team. So to JJ's point, this could be an opportunity for Justin Fields to resurrect his career. Looks like the Jets will eat a bulk of that guaranteed money, and they get a 6th-round pick for next year's draft. So from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And hopefully this works out for Justin Fields, because, again, this will be the first time he goes to a offensive-minded head coach's team.
Jay, I want to come back to you, because as you mentioned, those backup jobs are moving on. Gardner Minshew, of course, signing to Arizona. He was there in KC last year. That is no longer the case. The reason for this move. But if you're Kansas City, as JJ kind of mentioned there, why not wait? He may have been released, or maybe down the line you could have got him later in the summer.
Yeah, to JJ's point, I think this was in the talks over the weekend, and that's why Justin Fields wasn't released. And the Jets were able to get a deal where they were able to recoup a 6th-round pick while eating most of Justin Fields' guaranteed money. You see the numbers right there in the 2025 season with the Jets. I believe in 9 games, he was sacked 27 times, and that's been the issue with Justin Fields, holding on to the ball too long, not processing fast enough. We know he's electric with his legs, and he has a strong arm. He just has not developed when it comes to processing and getting the ball out of his hands. Now, he takes care of the football. He doesn't have a lot of interceptions, but he takes unwarranted sacks. So I think this just made a lot of sense synergy-wise, right? The Kansas City Chiefs were looking at the landscape of the NFL and said, there's not that many, veteran quarterbacks up there to back up Patrick Mahomes just in case he's not ready to start the season. Let's go get a guy with experience. And with Andy Reid as the head coach and the offensive play caller, let's see if we can develop this guy.
JJ, I want to come back to you and dig a little deeper into this with Mahomes. Obviously, it's the ACL, the reason why they make this move today. But if you're looking at this from a different perspective of, is this just a stopgap for maybe the start of the season, week 5? Are you a little worried that you may not have Mahomes for a longer period of time here?
No, I mean, they just have to have a backup quarterback. right? I mean, Gardner Minshew's not there. They clearly didn't have an interest in Carson Wentz, who is still out there, who had been a quarterback for them a few years ago. So you need literally someone. And so you have Justin Fields, who Leger touched on it, right? The thing about him has been, man, just throw the ball, like 1, 2, hit it and throw. And so hopefully that can be worked out with Andy Reid. Hopefully he's not so far into his career that cannot be fixed, because we saw the numbers there, all the sacks, just 1 interception. There's a reason for that, right? And so he's going to have to take a couple more risks, and he's going to have to be pushed in training camp. I'm going to be very excited to go out to St. Joseph, Missouri in late July and early August and watch him in those historically competitive and hot training camp practices that Andy Reid puts on against the Kansas City Chiefs defense, to watch him rip it. So look, the Chiefs' hope and their optimism is all toward Patrick Mahomes being ready to go week 1. If they don't have Patrick Mahomes for the first quarter of the season, he's the engine. The whole point of the Kansas City Chiefs is Patrick Mahomes. So it frankly wouldn't matter if it's Gardner Minshew or Chris Oladokun or Justin Fields or Carson Wentz. The whole entire point is Patrick Mahomes, and that is why he got the ACL surgery as quickly as possible. That's why they are closely monitoring his progress and rehab. That's why there is a great deal of hope and optimism that he will be ready for the start of the season.
You both have mentioned, of course, this is a offensive-minded team when it comes to Andy Reid, and this is the first time he's had the luxury of having that based on his last 3 stops there, with this being a 4th one here in 6 years. But Leger, when you look at it here, I'm curious, because he's talked about post-retirement stuff not too long ago. Also, maybe this is somewhere where it's like, all right, well, what's next for me? What do you expect from him, at least to be a QB2 in this offense?
Yeah, to JJ's point, you're hoping that he isn't too far gone when it comes to the development of processing what the defense is showing you and getting the ball out of his hands. I talked about how electrifying he is with his legs, but now it's time for him to develop from within the pocket. That's been his issue, right? He has the arm strength. He has all the tools in the tool bag. He just has not been able to develop them. So with a guy like Andy Reid, and you hit on it, Brandon, right? This will be his first stop with a head coach that's offensive-minded. He's been with all defensive-minded coaches for his whole tenure in the NFL. We're hoping that he's still young enough where Andy Reid could be like, Justin, what do you see in this play? Right? This is how I see it. This is where the ball should go. Get the ball out of your hands, because me and JJ alluded to it. 27 sacks in 9 games is abysmal. You cannot take that many sacks. Yet you're taking care of the football and not putting it in harm's way. But a 3 and out hurts your defense as well. So hopefully Andy Reid, in case they have to turn to him, can develop this guy in regards to from within the pocket and processing and getting the ball out of his hands quickly.
We'll see what that looks like in training. Oh, go ahead, JJ.
And great points there by Leger. I just wanted to turn the focus really quickly on the New York Jets, right? Because they go out and they get Geno Smith, and now they don't really seemingly have Justin Fields. That worked out for a year, and it didn't work out, and so now they move forward. Geno Smith, they're hoping that he will be their week 1 starter. There is no week 1 starter option in the draft, right? It's Fernando Mendoza. He's going to the Raiders, and then that's it. So the Jets clearly are banking on 2027. And that draft, right? There's no other veteran quarterback option that's really out there. They tried out Brady Cook, and they're hoping that they can get a little bit more out of him as that backup option. But don't be surprised if most of their eggs are in the Geno Smith basket. They could add someone, a late round pick in the draft. They could add a veteran as we get closer to training camp after they've kind of gone through May, June, right? And seen that, all right, we need somebody else in here. But for all intents and purposes, this is Geno Smith's team in 2026 with an eye for the New York Jets on competing for the quarterback of the future in 2027.
So some flexibility for both sides with this deal here. Leger, this is for you and you only. Can you grade the trade on both sides here after we saw today?
I'm going to give the Jets a B+ because they have to eat a lot of that money, but they do get a 6th-round pick. And for the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to give them a B- just because when you look at the landscape of the NFL, most of those backup jobs were ate up. I thought they should have been a little bit more aggressive just because we know Mahomes is coming off the ACL. But they get a veteran guy that has a lot of upside, just has not been able to develop. And before we move on to JJ, I just had a quick question for him because you brought up a really good point with the Jets. Now that they've traded away Justin Fields, they're looking at potentially needing a backup. I've heard Carson Wentz could be a name. Obviously, there's some synergy with Frank Reich as the offensive coordinator. Is there anybody else that comes to mind that could be a backup option for the Jets, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, Carson Wentz is obviously the top name that you're going to hear because of his familiarity with Frank Reich, because it doesn't appear that anyone, the Kansas City Chiefs could have had interest in Carson Wentz, right? And if you're someone like Carson Wentz, and hey, you don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to be ready, and maybe you will be able to put out some great tape in the preseason because of that. The fact that he is not with the Kansas City Chiefs and is available to the Jets, that could certainly be one of those names. Now, as we get closer to the draft, a lot of these veteran quarterbacks aren't going to go rush to go sign somewhere, right? Because they could get drafted over, right? Kirk Cousins isn't going to go rush somewhere to go sign, and then they're going to take a quarterback that they want to give reps to after they draft him in the third round, for example. So at this point, I think we could see guys like Kirk Cousins and Joe Flacco. I'm not saying they're going to the Jets, but we could see them sign somewhere in May or in June versus right before the draft, and then they get somebody who's 21 years old who has to get reps drafted over them.
So options on the table for others out there looking for maybe those QBs out there in that 2 spot. Leger Duzbo and Jonathan Jones, appreciate your time on that breaking news. By the way, you can